Welcome to the Big Heart Business Show. My name is Carrie Shepherd, business strategist, philanthropist, and believer. I'm on a mission to help entrepreneurs be more, do more, and give more beyond their business, and to do it with more heart and less hustle. Each week on the show, I'll be here with a message or interview from a powerhouse entrepreneur that has built their business by giving back. Together, we will inspire you, fuel you, and get you going with simple action steps and strategies to grow your purpose-driven business. Our philosophy here is that we can change the world one big heart business at a time. Let's get started. This is episode number 7 of the Big Heart Business Show. Today, I have the pleasure of talking with Carrie Severson. Carrie Severson is a retired journalist with 20 years in the industry. She stopped writing stories about other people in 2014, and now she shares her own personal stories on media outlets like Redbook, Mind Body Green, and SheKnows.com. Carrie is a storyteller trainer for women around the world, as well as she helps those who have stories to share write about them. She is gifted at helping inspiring women craft their stories for the world to see. Welcome, Carrie. I'm so excited to have you today.
Thank you. It's nice to be here. Good to see you.
Yes, you as well. I would love for you to share a little bit of the behind the scenes of how you got to where you are right now. How did you get into storytelling and really making it your life's work?
Okay. Well, let's see. So my storytelling journey actually starts in childhood. I was bullied as a kid, and I had low self-esteem as a kid, but I was super creative. And so I have a dance background, and I would love to paint. And I was always really fascinated with creating short stories. So I didn't have the tools to take my imaginative world and apply it to the confidence in my day-to-day world. And a lot of that had to do with growing up in the 80s. I am a child of
good old 80s.
Yeah. When the supermodel craze was at its peak for I'm 5'9", I'm curvy, I have crazy hair. And this is how I've looked since I was 10 years old. And there really wasn't anyone I could turn to admire. And so I made a pact with myself when I graduated from high school. I wanted to change the way girls treated girls and women treated women. And I thought the easiest way to do that would be to get involved in the media. So I went off to college with really focused on getting a journalism degree and kind of working my way up the ranks to write personality profiles about women I wanted to see portrayed in the media. And then along the way, I got some PR experience. I moved from journalism to advertising and marketing. And I ended up launching a nonprofit myself in 2011 called Severson Sisters. And we portrayed strong, positive, we gave girls tools to help them enhance their relationships with other girls. So we created workbooks to give them opportunities to learn how to talk to one another, be better friends to one another, know what to do about bullying and peer pressure. But in 2013, I really burned out. Our little nonprofit went from 0 to 3,000 in a matter of a year and a half.
Wow.
Yeah, we were portrayed in a lot of national media, a lot of local media, and I just couldn't keep up with the demand. So I actually I went back to my roots as a storyteller, and I started writing my burnout experience for Redbook and Mind Body Green, and I started coming out of my professional burnouts at that time. And as I started getting more opportunities to speak and to share that experience, entrepreneurs started coming forward and asking me to help them get published. And so this storytelling business really came out of my first business, which was a nonprofit where I burned out. So how I got to where I am today.
Yeah, wow. And I think it's so fascinating when you go all the way back to as a young child, really knowing and having that vision for really using your voice and wanting to share that. I think that's very insightful to have that as such a young woman.
Yeah, I think we're all sort of, I think we're predestined and designed to do something great with our lives. And I always had that drive. I always knew it was meant to do something great, and not in a matter of speaking in terms of this is, cool. I knew I was meant to do something on a grand scale. And when the nonprofit came into reality, I thought, this is it. And then there was this constant quest for, if this is what I'm supposed to do, why is it so hard? If God wanted me to do this, why am I struggling so much? And so there was this constant battle with myself, though, the entire time. And the nonprofit is 6 years old. And I finally just sort of leaned back about 2 years ago. Working with you was one of the very first things I did as a storytelling entrepreneur, where I just decided to take my gifts that I had, at my core, and figure out a way to make a business out of it. So.
Yeah. And I think you bring up a good point about, this idea that if we have this desire to do something and we really feel like that's our mission and the reason that we've been put on this earth, but then it's so difficult and there's that struggle. What had you make that leap, and what would you tell other entrepreneurs? Because I believe a lot of people feel that way when things aren't happening. And specifically when you talk about the finances not coming in, how frustrating that can be to be in that place.
It was a real battle. I mean, it was every day for a good year and a half. Burnout is a psychological, emotional, physical sort of, I don't know if it's a disease or disorder, but it's that fight or flight thing that we have. And I had to consistently surrender every single day. Like, I would show up and I would do what I could. And if nothing happened, I would have to, accept that it's out of my control. It's time to look at something else. It's time to do something else. And that wasn't an easy decision. I mean, I really struggled with it for a year and a half. So it wasn't something I really mastered. When I finally accepted my burnout, it was my 35th birthday. I was lying in bed and I was resentful. I had this on my birthday, I had this bitter taste in my mouth. And I was like, I can't believe this is where I'm at. This is nowhere near where I thought I would be. And so I heard the word burnout while lying in my bed, got out my phone, Googled the term, and I was like, this is who I am. Everything about this is, I can resonate with this. So it was actually that aha moment that I was like, it doesn't have to be this way, but I have to agree to allow it to be different. So, recovering from burnout became my quest, which meant I had to kind of let go of the reins of the nonprofit, find a part-time job to help me, kind of gain some stability back. And I went to my board of directors and we decided to retool our business plan. So in 2014, we became a train the trainer business model where we sold boxes of our workbooks at bulk to schools, and we trained teachers on how to implement our program. And that helped us survive, but it was not an easy decision to make. And I felt like by taking myself out of the middle of it, I was failing somehow. But, I think every entrepreneur feels like that, right? If they're not in the thrust of it and in that grind, that we're somehow failures.
Yeah, that's such a good point. But I like the way that you went through that process of starting with making a decision that you're going to do something different and being open to taking a step back to really kind of figure out what you want to do and make a new plan and then move forward. And I think sometimes that can be a really hard position to say, I've got to scale back in order to grow. So I love that you share that. So talk to us a little bit about, the work that you do with entrepreneurs and really helping them share their story. What does that process look like? And why is that so important for entrepreneurs to really focus on storytelling? Because I know you're so passionate about that.
Yeah, I love story. I think story is a healing element. There's a lot of positive energy that comes with story. I think it's what connects us. And so even from you go to a sales perspective, everyone tells you to get emotional, let them see you, let them connect with you. That's really what your story is. And so we don't have a single story. We have multiple stories within our overall experience. So my job is to help entrepreneurs take big aha moments or big shifts or big statements or mantras or messages and break them down into absorbable slices that their reader can absorb to help them form a connection to the storyteller. So for example, I have a client published tomorrow, and she's been texting me all day about, there's anxiety coming up about sharing this story for the first time. There's a lot of fear that comes up. But when we're sharing a really personal experience of ours as an entrepreneur, our audience gets to see us in a new light. We get to help others go through or heal from an experience we've had. And our tribe gets to grow as well. So people who didn't necessarily know who this woman is tomorrow gets to see something brand new about her and comes over to her site, joins her list, forms a relationship with her, reaches out to her, thanks her for her message, and pretty soon you form a brand new client. So it's an organic way for entrepreneurs to grow their business while healing an element of their own past or sharing something super personal. I love it. It's so much fun.
Yeah. So not only are you helping entrepreneurs actually share their story, but you're also helping them get published so that they are getting the right eyes and the right quantity on their story. So tell us a little bit about how are you helping your clients get published?
So we go through like a Q&A over the phone. I ask them a series of questions and I pull out the right material to form an 800-word personal essay. I then match the essay to an outlet, and we agree on, this particular website would be a really good match for this essay. If I have an editor contact, I'll make an introduction for my clients. If the outlet that we're trying to pitch accepts essays online, I'll help my client walk through the process of pitching it. If it's rejected, we go through this experience multiple times. So I make sure that whatever we're creating does end up published somehow, some way. So we usually have a top 3 publication tier that we focus on getting published on. But again, it always comes back down to the energy of the essay that we've created, to the energy of the outlet and the readers, absorbing that piece. So.
Well, that's a great point too, that it takes multiple times to submit and you're not just getting the first place you submit. It's not necessarily saying yes. So I think that's a good point for people to remember when they're wanting to get published, is that you've got to have a little bit of persistence and grit to keep going and to find the right one. I think that's a great point too, is the same story that maybe is right for, the Huffington Post might not be the same kind of article that's correct for Forbes. Is that true?
Yep. And then it comes down to timing too. So a lot of times if you have been passed up 3 times, I say, put it down for a second, a month, and then try another 3 tiers in next month, because what we've created may not be what people are looking for right now. So it's a cyclical business. A lot of it comes down to really what they've already published and what they have in their pipeline. So that's why it's important to stay consistent. And then not only consistent with that one piece, but as soon as you have that one published, you should have a second piece ready to go and in the pipeline to get published, so that you're creating momentum. So your audience doesn't stay stale or, lose interest. It's a really good funnel to create for yourself.
Oh, I love that word.
I know.
So if you were talking to somebody that's maybe newer of really thinking about kind of starting to share their story and maybe getting published is like, feels a little scary, what would be some baby steps somebody could take right now to maybe even just start getting clarity around their story, or even start sharing little bits of it or pieces of it?
I always start with what's one big lesson you've learned over the last 6 months. That's usually a pretty low-hanging piece of fruit. You can pull personal essays aren't anything more than 500 to 800 words. So if you start with a lesson that you've learned and you just freeform write about that particular lesson, what it felt like to go through it, nothing super scary, nothing super personal, but it's there for the taking. Most business outlets are looking for those types of lessons because there's always an entrepreneur coming up right behind you who's trying to gain what you just experienced.
That's such a good point. Yeah, just starting with the baby steps. I like that idea too about the biggest lesson over the last 6 months, because that probably isn't like the depth of like your biggest triumph in life. That can feel a little scary. And so kind of talking about that process that somebody would go through and getting published and sharing a story like this. And you talked about kind of the fear coming up, or the fear of like, okay, it's getting published tomorrow. I'm nervous about that. How do you help your clients walk through that? What kind of advice, or is there exercises or something that you have them do to kind of diminish those fears, or I always say use fear to fuel you, to kind of push you forward?
Yeah, I give a lot of journaling exercises around like, what is it that really scares you about being vocal and visible around this piece? Who is it that you're afraid is going to judge you? So typically the anxiety we feel about being visible has to do with judgment or rejection or abandonment. There's this darkness that we each have that stems from something long time ago. So I give a lot of journaling exercises that can help address the root of that fear, that anxiety. And then when it's actually published, I emphasize, don't just lean back and allow it to sort of float. Take control over it. This is a component that you can feel in control of. So oftentimes that fear, that anxiety has to do with the fact that we don't know what's going to happen. It's the unknown. But if you share the personal essay, if you share your published piece with your friends and family first thing in the morning, you share it with your network, you are in control of it. You can't control what they're going to say about it, but at least you feel a little bit more, in your corner. So the journaling exercises and the promotional ladder is really where I help people move through that fear.
I love that so much. Yeah. Letting your warm circle and your friends and family see that. And hopefully they're going to give you positive feedback and, give you that support so that can feel less scary. That's a great tip. And I think that could go with anything that we're doing in our business, right? It's like anytime we're stepping outside of our comfort zone, it can feel a little scary, but that's why it's so important to start building your tribe and building your community of people that really do know you, and they're going to be supportive of you, pretty much with whatever you put out there in some capacity.
Yep. My mom is always one of the very first people to read the things I write. And so, if I'm writing some super personal stuff that has nothing to do with my business, I'll do a mental check on like, who do I want to share this with and where do I want to share this? But if it's a business piece, it goes out to my network and eBlast and LinkedIn, and, I'm very proactive in it. And at the end of the day, people are going to like it. They're not going to like it. That has nothing to do with me. I've learned how to stay unattached to that. And I do my best to kind of give those lessons out to the people that I work with.
Yeah, that's a great point, that every piece isn't for everybody. And that brings up a great point too. Somebody that might be in more of the business arena, that you might think things are going to be a lot more kind of step by step. Here are the 3 lessons I learned. When you start to think about like a personal story and kind of sharing one of those things that might feel a little bit more vulnerable, what are the benefits of somebody sharing a story like that, even when their business is much more related to kind of step-by-step strategies, things like that?
Well, I'm really fortunate so I did a ton of stories on fertility in 2016, and has something to do with me as an entrepreneur, but women would email me and say, I'm ready to write my story on fertility. And so based on me sharing my own personal experience, I gained a new client who was ready to share her own personal experience. So when I've got a client who tomorrow, she is a global leader in thought, strategy, and leadership. She goes around the world and she teaches leaders how to be responsible in their leadership. And Tomorrow the Peace is about an incredibly personal, vulnerable experience that she had when she was in her early 20s. Has nothing to do with one another. However, teaching people around the world how to be better leaders has to start with her being vulnerable and open to sharing her own personal lessons. So we're hoping that kicks back to her speaking opportunities, which could then lead to new potential clients and new partnerships. You never really know how it's going to kick back. And the thing that I find entrepreneurs so laser focused on is that they're not open to the possibilities of the new. Like, you could get published and somebody could read your piece and say, hey, I want to partner with you on X, Y, and Z, but it has nothing to do with what you're doing today. So it is a law of attraction tool, and it's a domino effect. It works every time.
That's such a great point, that it's not always about, it is about having goals and what are the goals for doing that, but that they can be speaking opportunities, they can be joint venture partnerships. So there's a lot of other opportunities that can exist by you getting visible and putting yourself out there. So that's a great point for everybody to really remember, is that, you are sharing you, and you are your business, no matter if you coach on business or love or relationships or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, my very first personal essay was for Huffington Post in 2014 on burnout. And when I started writing about my love life a year later, I was actually in a writers networking group, and the editor of Redbook asked me to write for her because she recognized my name from the Huffington Post piece the year before. And so you never really know how this is going to play out, right? You don't know the end result. So don't cut yourself off, and stay open to the possibilities that everything you've been through is going to benefit you somehow, some way. Your job is to stay open and visible and strong in your vulnerability, and be willing to share your experiences and your lessons, because somebody's always looking to learn from you.
Such a good point. Yeah, I love that so much. And yeah, it's kind of a small world. So that's a good point too, that people are going to see you being out there. And I believe that the more you do it, the better you're going to get. So that when you do get that big opportunity to be in whatever that favorite magazine is, or that big publication that you want to be in, you will have had the experience, and it's not your first time getting published. And hopefully those fears and that clarity is going to be easier for you.
Mm-hmm.
So. Well, let's talk a little bit. I know you already mentioned a little bit about your charity, and I'd love to talk a little bit about that, and really talk about what your give back plan looks like with your charity, why that's important, and maybe even talking a little bit more about your story on why you really felt called to start a nonprofit.
Yeah, well, I was working for an advertising agency and felt like I had gotten really far away from this initial desire to help girls treat girls better and women treat women better. I got into journalism because I wanted to make an impact in the way media portrayed females, and I was not doing that whatsoever. I was like writing press releases for University of Phoenix and multi-billion-dollar companies and helping them get published or get press. And so I took a step back, and for like a good 6 months, every day after work, I would come home and I would journal. And I would ask myself questions that I didn't know the answer to. Things like, what can I see myself doing for the rest of my life? And how can I make an impact in the world? And when it came down to it, everything always came back to self-esteem, females, creative arts, because those are really my passion, my passion points. So I did a ton of research on what it was going to take to run a nonprofit, and hit the go button in 2011. And it was just the right place, right product, right program. Bullying girls was on the rise. Girl power was, everywhere from the White House to Ellen DeGeneres. And so within a matter of a year, we were asked to create something that moms and daughters in small town Maine could implement. So we actually I got together with a group of advisors, and we created the Supergirl Guide series, which is a series of workbooks that we started selling. A publisher came to us, asked us to work with him. And that's what we did. We created curriculum in a workbook format that we could sell. And it's been phenomenal. I mean, we've impacted thousands of lives over the last 6 years. So
that's absolutely incredible. So when somebody maybe hears a nonprofit, I really believe a nonprofit is just like a business. You've got to make money to stay open.
Mhm.
And talk to us a little bit about how you get funding and why you decided to open it up as a nonprofit rather than just open it up as a business where you were selling these workbooks and going into schools and doing this type of work.
Well, I wanted girls in poor areas to be as influenced as girls with parents who could afford this program. And so right out of the gate, I realized that bullying and self-esteem issues weren't just happening in one demographic. I mean, when I looked at the statistics of girl on girl bullying, it was social media, it was after school centers, it was churches, it was libraries, it was neighborhoods. So it had to be something that was easily accessible and universal, which meant that we had to rely on people giving in order to give schools who couldn't afford it the tools necessary to implement. But we relied very little on state funding. We didn't do a ton of grant writing. We really made it by selling, asking for donations and then selling our curriculum to facilitators. We licensed our material out a lot. So the train the trainer materials is really what sort of saved the nonprofit and created some good substantial funding for us.
Yeah. And so does it kind of work like the schools basically that can afford it and can put the funding into buying the materials, they do. And then those schools that are kind of lower economic stature, then you're basically donating or selling it at a very nominal fee. Is that kind of how it works?
Yep. So, and that was how we did it for several years. And now what we're really focused on is we're interested in having general public purchase workbooks in bulk. And then we give the train the trainer materials to the people who purchase it, and they get to go out and give it to the schools. And so it's very, we've taken all of the overhead out of it. We've taken, it is strictly a donation, a volunteer-based organization at this point, because I don't take revenue out of it. So we run it as a volunteer base now.
Nice. So is this something that a parent could go and purchase the workbook if they wanted to help their daughter? Then it's not, doesn't, okay.
Yeah, so
That's
all
awesome.
3 of the workbooks are on my personal website.
Okay.
They're sold at bookstores nationwide, as well as online. And I want to say retail, they're $16.95. And then I have, if you're interested in buying a box of books, it's 35 boxes of books in one. So it would be one Supergirl Guide to Respect box, which is 35 workbooks, and that's $200. And then I send you a box of books and I email you the train the trainer materials, and you get to go out and give it to whatever school you want.
That's fantastic. I love that so much. I mean, that is such a hot topic. And I know for myself, I don't have children, but I have 3 goddaughters, and one of them has already experienced bullying, and it just completely breaks my heart. And I love that you're really making a difference and teaching these girls how to really empower themselves and really shifting a generation. So
it's great. Yeah, I'm glad. We're very fortunate that we've been able to make as big of a difference as we have, and we hope that it continues to make a ripple effect that lives.
So what is your vision for the organization? Do you have some bigger, I'm sure have some bigger ideas of where you're going to go over the next couple years or in the future?
Well, we moving in this direction of just giving out boxes of books and giving our train the trainer materials out into the communities. And that is really kind of our vision for the next year, strictly being a volunteer basis. This is the first year that we're doing this as a volunteer basis. And so we're going to ride it out the rest of the year to see how this works with people purchasing boxes of books for me directly, me sending out that material. But in the future, I mean, I wanted to translate the materials into different languages. And that's something that is super exciting and probably 2 to 3 years down the line.
Oh yeah, that's an awesome vision. So when we think about, a lot of the people that are listening to this show and that are, really getting connected with us have that desire to want to do something big, but it might feel a little bit scary to maybe open their own nonprofit right now, or, just kind of not knowing what that next step is to really kind of be able to give back with their business, whether it be time, money, or a combination. What kind of advice would you give somebody if they're kind of in that space?
Well, starting with the philanthropic branch of their for-profit is my best piece of advice. I mean, so many nonprofits will lend their 501c3 number or their EIN number to a startup because it does take a while for the IRS to give you your own EIN or 501c3 number. I want to say that every state is very, very different on how a 501c3 can run. So here in Arizona, it's incredibly complicated. And so for those people who've come forward and asked me, hey, do you recommend me launching a nonprofit? I always say, if you can figure out a way to make an impact in the world or in your community underneath your existing LLC, I highly recommend that first and get some traction going first before you launch in the 501. So many funders want pre and post surveys. They want so much research before they give you funding. And unless you've got a strong backing or some, venture capital, or they're called angels in the nonprofit world. Unless you've got a good, and I'm talking like a good $100,000 to $200,000 to start with, you're already a little bit stressed. So make an impact in the world underneath your LLC first, or your corporation first. And let that ride. And when you feel like you've got a good traction or some good results, move into the 501 space.
That's such good feedback. Yeah, that it's such a big undertaking to really start a charity. And so when you say to really kind of make some headway with your LLC or your corporation, what are some of those things that you would advise somebody to do, as far as maybe some tangible steps that they could take?
Well, we're coming up on summer here now, so parents are looking to partner with like a local community center and create some curriculum to implement during a week for free, and make some take some pictures and give some pre-surveys about one specific element that you're trying to change, and do a post survey on how they experienced it. That's a good starting point, right? So if you're going to create something on helping girls with their self-image and you're focused on 8th grade girls, give them a week to talk to you about how they feel, what they are currently doing, give them some tools to change that, to enhance that. And at the end of it, give them another survey, and chances are you gave them some, good tools to put in their tool belt. Then from there, you can write a little report about what you did in the community, about how you helped X number of girls. And, the following year or during fall break, you could go out and pitch somebody and say, hey, are you willing to give me $500 to put on this summer camp? So the other thing I could recommend is sponsoring. So if you are partnered with, let's say, the local YMCA or the local Boys and Girls Club, and you want to give 25 children an opportunity to do X, Y, or Z for the summer, don't just give them money, but actually show up every day, introduce yourself, make sure that your impact is there somehow. It's more than, community, 501c3s are looking for people who aren't just going to give the cash, but are looking for people to actually do the work. That's really the missing ingredient in that world. Which is one of the reasons I personally burnt out, is that it always fell back down to me. So many people want to just give money, but the folks willing to show up and do the work and actually make the impact and make the change is the link. So be the link.
I like that. I like that a lot. And I like those tangible tips about really being able to get involved and starting community-wide, something that you can actually kind of touch and feel and see the fruits of what you're doing to give back. So Those are great tips. Thank you so much.
Oh, thanks.
So Carrie, when you think about kind of the change that you really want to see in the world with what you're doing with storytelling, what you're doing with your charity, and just sharing your change look.
Thank you for listening to this
I talk
episode
about
of the
storytelling
Big
from an
Heart Business
energetic
Show.
perspective. So
If you
I
know
think
someone that could
storytelling is
benefit
a
from this
healing
information,
element.
I would so
And
appreciate
I think
it
the world
if you
is in
shared the
desperate
love.
need of
And make sure to
healing.
subscribe to
It's
this
not just
channel
surface stuff
and leave a
anymore.
review.
We can't just
One
get
last
by
thing.
on
If you're ready to fuel your big heart business,
hearing
with a
what each other are
consistent flow
saying. We
of
have to
cash
figure
and
out a way
clients,
to
head
not
on
just
over
coexist, but a way to
carrieshepherd.com
connect with one another, be in harmony with one another,
access a
support
very
each other.
special
And
video
in my
series
opinion,
I
that really
created
that
just
keep
for you.
listening to one
And
another
don't forget,
is where that starts.
we are
but
changing the world.
understanding each
one
other's
big
stories is
heart
really
business at a
that
time.
bridge. And so I think of myself as a vessel of story in that it is going to help us heal. And